So, I heard you're looking for a go-to source for entertainment.
Wait for it.
Gaming?
Wait for it.
Anime?
Plus Ultra!
Mr. Eric Almighty and Phil the Filipino? Yeah, they've got you covered. And all you gotta do is... wait for it. This is the Wait For It podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Wait For It podcast. I am your co-host, Phil Barrera, aka Phil the Filipino.
And I'm your other co-host, Mr. Eric Almighty. And for this episode of Late to the Party, I really can't explain this one to you guys because for some reason, the word Tintin came up out of context. And it led to us both saying, have we watched the Adventures of Tintin? We recently went into Indiana Jones on this series. Phil, big fan of the Uncharted game, and I think the movie as well. So a lot of tie-ins that led us to this position. This is Late to the Party, and our episode today, The Adventures of Tintin. Excited to get into it, Phil.
What is not going to float around on the internet is you saying that I am a fan of the Uncharted movie. No, that is not what that... We will talk about the Uncharted movie a little bit later in this episode, but the one that exists currently... Actually, it doesn't exist. There is no Uncharted movie that has ever been made. Only the YouTube short starring Nathan Fillion. That's the only one in terms of live action Nathan Drake. But yes, we are talking about The Adventures of Tintin, released in 2011. And yeah, I don't know what we were talking about, but like I remember I thought of this movie and it wasn't like the movie that I was initially trying to bring up. And then I started seeing the memes on Twitter, so like the algorithm picked up on it. And as we started looking into kind of like the reviews and the receptions of the film, we were like, yeah, we should probably check this out. So here we are, a new year, but back to the same old grind here at the Wait For It podcast, a whole lot planned. And this is the first episode of Late to the Party of 2025. So welcome. Thank you guys so much. If you enjoy this and you want to find where the rest of our content is, if you need a little bit of a reminder even, make sure you stick around to the end of the episode and we'll let you know where all of that is. But Eric, let's get back to work here today. I'll give you guys the letterbox synopsis, The Adventures of Tintin, directed by an up-and-coming director at the time in 2011, Steven Spielberg. You guys might be familiar with his work. Intrepid young reporter Tintin and his loyal dog Snowy are thrust into a world of high adventure when they discover a ship carrying an explosive secret. As Tintin is drawn into a centuries-old mystery, Ivan Ivanovich, Sakharine, suspects him of stealing a priceless treasure. Tintin and Snowy, with the help of salty, cantankerous Captain Haddock and bumbling detectives Thompson and Thompson, travel half the world one step ahead of their enemies as Tintin endeavors to find the Unicorn, a sunken ship that may hold a vast fortune, but also an ancient curse. That is the longest fucking letterbox review I've ever read. I've never seen one that is this long. It kept going.
I was like, there's no way you prepared for that.
What's the one on
long.
IMDb? Intrepid reporter Tintin and Captain Haddock set off on a treasure hunt for a sunken ship commanded by Haddock's ancestor. Okay.
There we go.
Start taking those into account going forward.
That was really long. I was like, that's the whole movie. Hello.
Oh my goodness. But anyway, The Adventures of Tintin, Eric, what is your familiarity with Tintin as a character overall? I basically only know him from, like, in passing as kind of like, I don't even know if he was like a newspaper comic character or something along those lines. When I think of Tintin, I also pair it with like Carmen Sandiego, that type of era of animation, whether it be on paper or in films or TV. So what did you know about this character, if anything, going into the movie?
Not very much, just like you. I will tell you, I did know that there were animated films before and a television show like back in the 90s or late 80s, and I'm pretty sure it's got to be based off of some type of comic strip because like just the style of those actual animated movies and shows, it really lends itself to that. It's almost Scooby-Doo-esque, but it also has like a much older aesthetic to it. So there were a lot of things that I knew of in passing, but like this is a movie I never thought I'd actually watch. When you look at it too, it immediately makes me think of like the Polar Express. We were just talking about how like the animation at that time felt odd, and we're going to talk about why that might be a strength now. I'm curious where you fell on that. But there were movies in this catalog like the BFG and Rango, and like some of them just had like a certain style that just never caught my attention. So for this movie, I always knew it existed. It seemed pretty straightforward. But Phil, we just mentioned at the top of the episode, we didn't even watch Indiana Jones until recently. So I don't think those adventure type Spielberg films was really our thing around that point in our lives when it came out all the way back, I believe, in 2011. So imagine what we were doing at that time, at that age, not watching this movie.
No, and I had to go back and look. Uncharted 2 came out in 2009, so like a couple years before this, but yeah, I'm sure I remember, or I can like recall seeing the trailer for this movie, like watching, I don't know, wrestling at that time or whatever it is when we still watched, cable television. I'm sure that came up a little bit. And yeah, that is a very good example in terms of the Polar Express. It's that uncanny valley, right, style of animation that kind of turned people away. And this movie kind of came and went. And I think now, looking back at it, it does have a ton of fans, as we'll go over the reception and the grades of this a little bit later. But yeah, at the time, I'm sure this is something I just kind of like scoffed at or didn't even really pay any attention whatsoever. I will say it looks like this character made its debut for the first appearance of Tintin was in 1929. Tintin in the Land of the Soviets gives you an idea of where this character kind of originated from. I did like the really cool kind of Easter egg there right in the beginning when he's getting his caricature done, and it's the comic strip style. That was really cool. I will throw this out here, Eric. As of January 1st today, we're recording this on January 1st, 2025. Tintin and other characters appearing in the original comic strips have entered the public domain. Is Tintin coming to the Pooniverse, Eric?
There's no way you spin this into a Pooniverse question. There's no way.
That's going to be my goal for all 2025. Each and every episode is going to tie it back. It's like my the 6 levels of Kevin Bacon or whatever it's called. But it's going to be the Pooniverse for me.
Phil's influence on this podcast over the past few months is almost irreversible damage. That's been occurring here since October. I would say. No, I don't think it's going to be part of the Pooniverse, but I've also been
Not
led
a question
astray
you
before.
thought you were going to answer today.
No, I didn't think this was a conversation we'd be having.
Well, here we are, 2025 off to an amazing start. But yeah, let's start there with the animation, because again, I think that's something that might throw people off even here in 2024. I thought it was fine. I can't tell you how I would feel 14 years ago now. Oh my God, it's 2025. 14 years ago now when this movie came out. I do know that, like you said, we talked about the Polar Express in the Christmas special here a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't feel the same way. I still feel like weird watching the Polar Express, seeing that animation, and I didn't feel that for the Adventures of Tintin. I think maybe because it's just so bright and colorful, and there's so much action going on, and the special effects look really great, and I think that's probably why, as opposed to, the Polar Express obviously has some really beautiful sets, but it's like later in the movie when they get to the North Pole, most of it takes place, on a train in the snow, and but this, they're going around all over the place. The characters that they have, really, really funny. Thompson and Thompson, voiced by Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, so like that's really, really cool. They were a really good comedic duo. I think for someone, if you are not familiar with this character like we were, this is a great jumping off point. I don't know that I would ever, I'm really enticed to like look more into Tintin, and honestly the options may be pretty limited anyway, but for an introduction to a character without having to really dive into his backstory, this is how you do it. This is really great. This is the exact opposite of how Uncharted felt like they had to show how Nate and Sully met in a bar, like years ago, which was just horribly done. So this is how you do it. This is how you do an origin story without diving really, really deep into a character's history.
Yeah, and watching the movie, it didn't feel like I needed to have seen the older versions, which it was nice because I wasn't knowing exactly what we were going to walk into with this movie, but it was also like classic Spielberg. Like, this is absolutely, I'm honestly surprised. I guess I'm not. I was going to say I'm surprised he hasn't done more animated stuff like this, but he has, and I don't know that they've been very successful. And I'd be curious what what this movie did back in 2011 as far as reception and box office and stuff like that. But I don't know. I feel like Spielberg's in his bag here, and I would love to see more of this today. Like, the vibe I got from this film, I know it wasn't the first film. We mentioned like the Polar Express. That was like 2004, I believe, much earlier. But this is very much the LA noir to me of movies, where in gaming, it wasn't like revolutionary, but it was so cool to see like the animatics and the special effects. Like, this is pretty legit looks on these characters. Nothing felt very fake. It very much had a realism to the animation that I thought maybe now I could appreciate, where before it kind of set me off, right? Or it just it pushed me in the wrong direction of thinking, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna like this. This is a little too different. Looking back on it, I would love to see a film shot like this now.
Yeah, and to go to the LA Noire example, and that was revolutionary at the time. I think the problem with LA Noire is like the animation was really cool, but the game and the story was like, man, it really falls off in the third act.
Yeah.
Maybe we might have to talk about LA Noire probably this year at some point, because we need to visit that game. I would love to actually go back and replay it. But yeah, the other animated movie he did was the BFG. I didn't see the Big Fucking Giant. Did you see? I assume that's what it stands for, correct?
I don't think so. And no, again, it was a movie that just like fell. It's a movie that fell off my radar, and I don't know, like, what the BFG. I mean, that movie came out,
Big Fucking Giant. Yeah.
It's 2016. So I don't think
Ready Player One is like animation adjacent. Like there's a shit ton of CGI in Ready Player One.
Yeah, and there definitely may be a movie here and there that like we're not thinking of. So if you're yelling it into your phone or the screen that you're watching this on, totally makes sense. I'm looking at Spielberg's directorial filmography. I mean, there's so many movies.
This is a crazy list of films.
Crazy list. So different, so diverse. But again, I guess I'm more surprised that since 2016 there hasn't been more of this. So I would just assume the reception to these films was poor. And maybe not necessarily from a critical standpoint, but from a money standpoint. I can't imagine these were very successful, but I would love to see stuff in this style of animation because it's very real. The realism I really liked about it. Phil, we're going to talk about the action in this movie, but I'm going to be honest with you. The scenes where they were like doing the pirate ships, there's like a flashback. I was like, I would love to see a Pirates of the Caribbean retold in this type of animation. I think that would be really cool. So again, there's just so much potential for this that I think it was maybe ahead of its time when it released.
Yeah, and not even necessarily, it doesn't even have to be Pirates of the Caribbean. It could just be an original pirate story. I think it would be really, really cool. They did a good job, I think, of building up like the lore of the Haddocks and, also the backstory between him and Saccharine. I thought that was also very good. So, I think ahead of its time is probably a good way to put it. It grossed $374 million on a $135 million budget. So in 2011, I feel like that should be successful. I would have, I'm not sure what defined success when it comes to films, 15 years ago, but it is strange that if, a movie now that when you look at the Letterboxd reviews, IMDb, what people have to say about it on social media, it's strange that there's never been a sequel to this. I don't know if there's any story behind that. I didn't get a chance to look into it before we recorded. I don't know if you did, Eric, but I mean, we're 14 years removed now, and yeah, like you said, with Disney kind, essentially like just like bleeding out, they're trying to find something that works. They're stuck in this animation style. Speaking of animation, and I know you know what I'm talking about, and this has nothing to do with the stories themselves. I'm just talking about how all of the Disney Pixar films right now look the same. Elemental, Inside Out 2, Encanto, this new movie that's about to come out in 2025, they all look the same visually, turning red, and it's just not working. And even though the stories I think are really solid, but that's why there is an opening where, you know, The Wild Robot is one of the best films of the year. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, Take a Shot, is one of the best animated films ever. And then, you know, we talk about, obviously, Spider-Verse, what they're doing. Like, Disney is just so afraid to take any type of risks right now because what they're doing is still making money. I think if something came out now like this, you're right. It would, I think it would do numbers.
And I think the thing about the movie that is really good, because it's not a perfect movie. There are definitely things about it that we'll kind of talk about from a score perspective on like where I'm taking and shaving points off. I enjoyed the film because it had really good voice acting, really all-star cast. You know, you mentioned some already. Daniel Craig is in this film, like Andy Serkis. Like, come on now, the GOAT of motion capture. Like, I shouldn't be surprised that he's involved in a project like this. But the characters are really interesting. The story has a couple of things that drag, but I think you are right. They construct it very well. It's a very straightforward kind of point A to point B with a couple twists and turns, but nothing extravagant. It's just an adventure, and the movie is called The Adventures of Tintin. So it very straightforward where I think anyone can jump into it. It's definitely constructed in a way where I think all ages can enjoy it. Although I will say, seeing Tintin pull out a gun really early on, a little startling for sure.
Hey, listen, the good news and bad news for anybody that's going up against Tintin, and that's the clip that makes rounds on social media all the time because it's so great. So yeah, I think, like you said, we didn't need to know a whole lot about his backstory. I like that they kind of, when he's there in like the very beginning of the film, like, oh, everybody knows Tintin, and then you see him in his apartment, and he's got like the, his articles that he's been all over the place, and that's enough, it was, like you said, very good for all ages, really easy to follow, and sprinkles in just the right amount of humor. Some of it, falls flat. We'll talk about that here in a little bit, but Andy Serkis is outstanding, and it's just a really, really fun film, and like I said, a character that I wouldn't mind returning in 2025. What are some other positives, Eric, that you had to take away? Did you watch this with your family, or did you watch it solo?
Yeah, so I watched it with my son, who was very vocal throughout the movie. Just the wows, the explosions, the oh no's, like absolutely fun to see the difference in age where we were watching that film and the things we were taking away from it. So again, I really think this movie has an all ages approach, which is really beneficial and I think a good thing. It takes a lot of the elements that you see in your classic Indiana Jones films and also like an Uncharted film. Again, I would easily have enjoyed an Uncharted film shot this way. Like in this style of animation, they could have done things closer to the game. I think there's a medium for this for sure. But I think
you could also play the game and not start with Uncharted 4,
Yeah, that's true. To whoever you're talking to, whoever you're envisioning.
Whoever you're shouting this into the void at.
Yeah, whoever you're envisioning when you made that comment. I'm sure they're hearing you loud and clear.
Not the person who got all of the Uncharted games when they bought their PlayStation 4.
And only played like 30 minutes of Uncharted 4
game.
Which is like a flashback. I climbed a roof. I believe that's about all I did. Or that person may have done. So I won't.
Well, he slipped. He got him in 4K.
I won't even digress any further. But yeah, no, I think those are a lot of my positives. Again, this movie is not perfect, and from a criticism standpoint, there's a couple things that I think back in 2011 even probably held it back from being like this fantastic masterpiece. But a movie, again, I cannot stress enough, that we really, really enjoyed. So from a positive standpoint, again, if you like Indiana Jones, you like Uncharted, you like this type of vibe, I think this is a movie for you, and I think that says a lot.
Yeah, plenty to offer here for those people that are looking to kind of fill that void. I know the Indiana Jones series, obviously, a lot of people think maybe want, a movie or two too far. We are devoid currently of a new Uncharted project. So, yeah, go back into the past, and find yourself watching this. I believe it's like $4 to rent on Amazon, so or $5 to purchase, so very, very fun time. I think it would have been also a fun time to see in theaters as well, with all the grand cinematics and, like you said, explosions and everything like that. So in terms of are we ready to move on to maybe some criticisms or feedback here, Eric, to talk about the film? Okay, cool. So yeah, I think one like we talked about, Andy Serkis is great. I wasn't the biggest fan of him being the storytelling vessel, you know what I mean, when he has to drink and then recall what happened in order to piece this puzzle together. I don't have a way that you could improve that. I'm not a filmmaker or a story writer, but for me, like, just going back and forth with it just got a little bit too over the top and too silly, like too many times where it happened and he's figuring things out, and then when he's sober, he has no recollection of who anybody is in his life. I think that bit went on a little bit too long. To carry it out maybe in the very beginning is totally fine, but for it to be like the linchpin of the entire story and the entire mystery, that was a little much for me.
I would agree. One of my criticisms here, Phil, is that this movie is an hour 47, and you would think that is a decent runtime. This movie is maybe 20 to 30 minutes too long. It's a little too long. And I think, again, it's a good thing that it appeals to all audiences, but I do feel like this movie was struggling with what audience it wanted to appeal to more. So again, it's all encompassing for kids and adults, but I felt like, and maybe this also speaks to the humor, sometimes it appealed to just kids, and then sometimes it appealed to just adults. And I think there wasn't a really good mixture there between the two. So while it is, again, appealing to both categories, I don't think it appealed to one or the other enough, and that was absolutely a criticism that I had. But those are two big ones that kind of knocked this movie down, and you already touched on another, which was the story does get a little convoluted. I think we could have made it a little bit more of a point A, point B film and enjoyed the time with the characters, because it just didn't need to be as complex as they were trying to make it.
Not only is it not point A to point B, it's point A to point B to point C to B.5, back to point A, and then back to A.5. So, yeah, it's just a little much. I mean, it's not hard to follow, but at some point you're like, remember, we're on the boat, then we're in the ocean, and then we're in the desert, and then we're at a different place in the desert, and yeah, it was a little bit too much, and maybe they had in mind, well, they certainly have in mind to make more of them, but if you're gonna like stretch out this specific mystery, then make more of them. But who knows what happened back then when the film was being made. I did forget to backtrack a little bit, Eric. I did actually mean to talk about the villain. How did you feel about Sakharine as a villain overall? I thought in terms of quote unquote realistic storytelling when it comes to like a really evil rich dude, that was pretty solid.
Yeah, again, it was very kind of run of the mill. He was just an asshole basically, and there was that relation that they tried to really bring to the present between him and Haddock. Again, I don't know how much that really worked for me as far as like making any type of emotional connection or ever feeling like the characters were really in danger. So none of that really stood out to me. I'll say the only like really intense scene, and this is what I was talking about, like the audience thing, was when Tintin is on the plane like unconscious and he's like close to the propeller. Like that was pretty intense. That was a pretty intense scene. But I think other than that, like there was no point where I was like ever fearful for any of the characters. And I think that's where the conflict isn't enhanced to a point to make me feel that way. And I think that's where, again, this movie struggled with being a family film or maybe something a little bit more adult.
Yeah, I understand that. So, yeah, other than that, I mean, anything else would be really nitpicky. I think everybody has that point in that moment where they feel like they're really, really connecting with the film and they really love it. Like there's a moment in time, you can probably pinpoint that when it happens. And that just didn't happen here for me. I very much enjoyed it, but it's probably not something that I would go back and watch myself or really implore to like have a movie night with. But I would tell people, hey, if you haven't seen Tintin and like you said, you like these things A, B, and C, or if you like or, you know, if you like Uncharted, all those things we talk about, Tintin is a really, really fun time. So, but it's not something that I really want to revisit, but certainly glad that, you know, we finally checked out because, again, it just started popping up in our lives all of a sudden. And, yeah, I'm glad we watched it. But, yeah, that moment never came where I was like, oh, this is something like really special, like to look back at films we've done in the past, like with Klaus, like what I did with Wolf Walkers, you know, and films that you have also felt that way in the past. That moment never came.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. And I think, again, to harpen back to the animation, I think there are things from this movie that could absolutely be utilized and even enhanced upon today. So I'm surprised we don't see more of this. Although, again, I think there are a lot of movies that fit this mold that maybe just didn't perform very well or weren't received very well, and that's maybe led to that. But I think looking back on it, there is a lot of potential with something like this. Phil, very curious where a lot of the scores are and then where we landed on our scores. I have updated my late to the party rankings. I believe you need to.
Oh, yeah. Let me do that.
So, but yeah, as we go through it, you know, as you do that, I'll throw out the Rotten Tomatoes stuff here, just to take over. 75% tomato meter, 74% for audience score, and I think that is pretty fair. Like above average scores overall. Over 200 reviews from critics, over 50,000 from audience. So I think that's completely fair. And Letterboxd, this particular movie has an average of 3.6, which again,
it's a good score.
Very reasonable score. Phil, where did you land and where did it fall on your late to the party list?
Yeah, I ended up giving this a 3.5, although I do think it's more than a more so a 3.25 than it is a 3. So I went ahead and gave it the extra bump because it is a lot of fun. It's everything I wanted out of an Uncharted movie. If you were to tell me that Tom Holland was cast as Tintin in 2025, I would be ecstatic. That would, because he would be great in a live action role for a Tintin. So I really hope that this project somehow, because of this podcast, actually, because of the weight that we hold in the world of entertainment and Hollywood, they will be like, Steven Spielberg will come across this episode and be like, you know what, Eric and Phil are right, I need to revisit the Adventures of Tintin, because obviously you have another story set out that you're ready to tell based on the ending of the film. But yeah, a lot of fun, a 3.5 here for me, and I currently have it ranked 18th out of 31, right behind Edge of Tomorrow and ahead of movies like Spirited, Tucker and Dale versus Evil, and Real Steel, which is the linchpin of all things late to the party. So yeah, right there in the middle, but a little bit behind, yeah, Edge of Tomorrow, Top Gun, Bullet Train, stuff like that.
Yeah, very funny to hear your perspective on how you got to your score, because mine is very similar, but just a different direction. Positive score nonetheless. I was also teetering like this is a 3.25 in my opinion. Using the 0.5 scale on Letterboxd, I just reduced it down to a 3. I don't believe this is a movie that I will revisit, nor if it's on. Like, I can appreciate it for what it is and what it's done and its positives, but even if it's on, I don't know that I'll be really engaged other than, ooh, it looks pretty. Like, when it comes to the story, not one I really want to dive into for a second or third or fourth time. And this movie, for me, falls at 23 out of 31 for movies we've watched here. Right under Raiders of the Lost Ark and Temple of Doom, but right above Real Steel and Tucker and Dale versus Evil. So, 3 out of 5. Again, fairly good score here. And, yeah, cannot stress enough. We enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, after, at least a positive start in 2025, we'll see how long this takes before this goes sideways, like last year did. I think last year got off to a pretty decent start,
Pretty
too.
good start, yeah.
And then, the middle was just, bang my head against the wall. So, fingers crossed that we can keep this up. We feel pretty good about February. To give you guys a little teaser, we feel pretty good about what we've chosen for February. So I think people will be satisfied
if we like them.
If we like them, because one of them is like, both of them are like classics. So we might be in trouble actually if we don't enjoy them.
I'm gonna tell you right now. There's one. The first one I had told you about, we had kind of already locked in. That I've been wanting to watch it forever. I think I'm gonna like enjoy that too much. I think I have a feeling I might love that movie.
We're
based
talking
off
about
of what
two
I've
classic people from like that era, so I'm pretty
Crazy.
I'm pretty confident. So.
Pretty confident. With that being said, we have a little segment here on Late to the Party we like to do called More Like This, where we take IMDb's More Like This films and we throw them out there to Phil to see what he would rather watch. So, Phil, would you rather watch Adventures of Tintin or one of these films? And your movies start off with, would you rather watch The Adventures of Tintin or Rango?
I've never seen Rango, but I assume it's Tintin because I've never wanted to watch Rango, nor do I ever want to cover it here on the podcast.
Have you ever watched Hugo?
No, I can picture the poster of it, but
with the clock?
I have not seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a feeling. This is a Martin Scorsese film, surprisingly enough. Would you rather watch Adventures of Tintin or Bolt?
we like Bolt a little bit too much, I think.
A little bit too much.
I mean, like, who voices the dog? John Travolta, right?
John Travolta,
John Travolta and Miley Cyrus.
The Miley Cyrus.
I gotta go with Bolt.
Crazy take.
I know.
Would you rather watch Adventures of Tintin or Happy Feet?
Happy Feet. Love Happy Feet. That's like a Happy Feet. If like Eric and I's friendship had a Horcrux, Happy Feet DVD might be one of them.
It might be. Honestly,
I've never said that out loud, but I know it makes sense.
It's another movie that we enjoy a little bit too much, arguably, but I also think it's underrated somehow at the same time. Another film here. Would you rather watch Adventures of Tintin or Monsters vs. Aliens?
Ooh. No, Tintin. I love Monsters vs. Aliens, has some really funny bits, but Tintin is better.
There we go. Tintin with a win. Would you rather watch Adventures of Tintin or the Lego Movie?
The Lego Movie. Yeah, the first Lego movie especially was like really, really good.
Top tier.
I don't remember too much about the second one. There's a third one, right? There's 3? Or is it just 2?
Just 2.
There's Lego Batman. That's probably what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Would you rather watch Adventures of Tintin or Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs?
Oh, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, absolutely. Yeah, that's a classic.
Yeah.
That's like one of my top 25 animated films of all time, the first one.
It's kind of funny. There's a lot of comedies coming up, and the movie is somewhat, like, again, the humor's hit or miss. It's kind of funny, but it's funny that this is the list of More Like This. They're, like, so odd. Another one, possibly the last one. Would you rather watch Adventures of Tintin or Megamind?
I've never seen Megamind.
What?
Yeah, no, I've never seen it. I guess I would have. Honestly, from what I've heard about Megamind, I think I would really enjoy it. I've just never watched it. But yeah, probably Megamind. But having never seen it, who knows? That's kind of a toss-up.
A little bit, yeah.
You should go with the letterboxed ones because there are films. I mean, it would lose to both of these films, but I think they're more in line with the tone. One being Atlantis, The Lost Empire, which I would absolutely watch Atlantis.
Okay.
And then,
I didn't even see that.
Yeah, they have them down there towards the bottom. And then the other one being Treasure Planet, which also Treasure Planet wins. If you cast Tom Holland in Treasure Planet to bring up Tom Holland again, I'd be okay with that. But Bolt does also come up here. And then also How to Train Your Dragon. How to Train Your Dragon clears for sure. And then Spider-Verse, that's honestly not very fair. So
that's not very, see, some of these just aren't fair.
But Atlantis and Treasure Planet are more in line with like the tone of Tintin, which makes more sense, like to what you were saying. Like those movies, those other movies kind of don't really fit.
Makes sense. Yeah. Well, listen, that is great feedback. I'm gonna look at this. I'm gonna look at this list. Yeah, there's a couple good ones. I mean, How to Train Your Dragon would have been not a fair competition.
What about Detective Pikachu? Which one would you watch?
I mean, Detective Pikachu.
Yeah.
Neither? Can I pick neither?
Yeah. Do something else.
Detective Pikachu is fine. Again,
You don't like Justice Smith.
I think I hate Justice Smith as like just an actor, and I'm glad that he has a career. All the best to you, but I've never watched a Justice Smith performance and been like, man, that was really good.
Not Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom.
No, and again, we're gonna talk about it then. The Letterboxd recap. You know, I saw the TV Glow. That's like a really acclaimed film.
I never
but
watched it.
Hated his performance in that. So, yeah, no, that before we dig ourselves in a hole, that was our More Like This, and yeah, now we have an opportunity to enhance that. We'll use Letterboxd as well for a nice mixture there. But Phil, that's I think we have stretched out as much as we can talking about the Adventures of Tintin. So if you're feeling pretty good, I think we left this episode in a good spot. And for some people that were afraid, one person in particular from our Patreon, you can be rest assured.
Weight Watchers.
The Weight Watchers. We'll tell you how to join that in a minute. But we are glad to tell that person you do not have to skip this episode. You can watch it. I think overall this is positive.
Yeah, definitely. So check out the Adventures of Tintin if you already have. Let us know what you think. And if you want to find out where you can let us know, click the Linktree link in the show notes of this episode. You'll find all the rest of our content, as well as our social media pages, the most important ones to keep up with being Instagram. TikTok is available as of right now. That's looking pretty good. We'll see what happens there. Our Discord channel, where we chat a lot with people in our community. Our Twitch channel, which we stream every other Thursday, as well as YouTube. If you want to support the show, you can do a couple of different things. Heading over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, leaving those 5-star reviews is so helpful. And we thank you so much to everybody who has already done that. You can also head over to YouTube, like, share, subscribe, all of that YouTube lingo, and just sharing the content with your friends. Let people know that you're listening, and let us know that you are listening. All of that is so helpful, and we can't wait to share with you all of the content we have planned for 2025 and beyond. But again, if you're wondering what the hell is a Weight Watcher and how do I become one, Eric will let you know a little bit more about that before closing us out.
Yeah, so of course, if you want to do all of the things that Phil mentioned that are free, definitely do that. That is probably the biggest support that you can do. But the next biggest thing that you can help out with is if you support us on platforms like Patreon, where our patrons currently are supporting us. People like Briar, Corey, Stefan, T3 Kato, and Vintage Macaroni. We really appreciate their support, and in exchange are giving access behind the scenes, looks, and early access to episodes like this one, with plans for more in the future. There's several tiers you can select from, but if you can't do that, you're not in a position. Again, all of the free stuff, from the likes, the comments, the listens, the engagement, and everything above, truly go a long way in the success of the podcast. With that all being said, my name is Mr. Eric Almighty. That is my co-host, Phil the Filipino. And please don't forget, we release new episodes every Wednesday with bonus content on platforms like Twitch and TikTok. And all you got to do is wait for it.
So, I heard you're looking for a go-to source for entertainment.
Wait for it.
Gaming?
Wait for it.
Anime?
Plus Ultra!
Mr. Eric Almighty and Phil the Filipino? Yeah, they've got you covered. And all you gotta do is wait for it. This is the Wait For It podcast.